I turned toward the driver's seat and felt the decision harden inside me, clear and impossible. Maybe it was madness. Maybe by morning I would regret it. Maybe I would regret it for the rest of my life. But I could not leave him there to die in the snow. I could not take him to the hospital either, not after seeing the panic in his eyes when I suggested it. That was not ordinary fear. That was the look of a man who believed a hospital would be the place where someone finished what they had started. And I could not drive away from another person's pain, not anymore. I live about 15 miles from here, I heard myself say. My voice sounded strangely calm, as if I were deciding what to make for dinner instead of changing the shape of my life. Old farmhouse outside Briar Glen, almost no neighbours, nobody will see us. I can clean the wound properly, dress it, give you antibiotics, and in the morning you will tell me everything. Then I will decide what to do next. The man in the passenger seat stared at me with stunned gratitude, as if I had appeared out of the storm instead of stopping in an old Subaru with a cracked windshield and half a tank of gas. "Why?" he asked hoarsely. "Why would you risk that for a stranger?" I looked away before he could see the tears gathering in my eyes. The honest answer was too large for the inside of that car. 8 months earlier, my husband had stopped on a road very much like this one because he saw a stranger in trouble. Thomas had always been that kind of man. He could not pass a stalled car, a lost dog, a neighbour with a broken fence, anyone who needed a hand. That night, a truck driver did not see him in the snow until it was too late. Since then, I had woken every night in a cold bed and hated myself for not asking him to stay home. Since then, my life had become a house with the lights off. "Because once," I said quietly, staring through the windshield at the dark road ahead, "a good man stopped for someone who needed help. He paid for it with his life. Maybe if I help you, the scales will feel a little less cruel." I started the engine. The wipers dragged wet snow from the glass. The injured man closed his eyes, one hand pressed against the blood darkening his coat. "My name is Julian," he whispered. "Mara," I said. "Try not to pass out, Julian. I'll do my best." His attempt at a smile failed halfway. Only then, as the car began to move, did I realise how badly my own hands were shaking. I had found him less than 10 minutes earlier, though it already felt like a memory from another life. I had been coming home from a double shift, the kind that leaves your bones humming and your mind strangely empty. There had been a call at a farmhouse, a boy with an asthma attack, then a car off the road near the quarry, then an elderly woman who kept apologising for needing help because she had slipped in her kitchen and could not get up. By the time I started back toward Briar Glen, the snow had become thick enough to erase the road behind me. I almost missed him. At first he was only a dark shape near the ditch. I thought it was a branch, then a deer, then a coat someone had lost from a truck. But something made me slow down. Maybe training, maybe instinct, maybe Thomas, if you believe the dead are sometimes allowed to whisper. I stopped. The wind shoved the car door back at me when I got out. Snow stung my face. I took the flashlight from the glove compartment and walked toward the ditch, already angry at myself for being afraid. Then the shape moved. He was lying on his side, half buried in snow, one arm pressed under him, the other reaching weakly toward the road. His lips were blue, his coat was open, blood had frozen in dark patches along his shirt. "Sir," I called, "can you hear me?" His eyes opened. They were the eyes of a man who had been waiting for either rescue or death and no longer trusted himself to know the difference. "No hospital," he gasped. Those were the first words he said to me. Not help me, not please, no hospital. I reached for my radio anyway. Every rule I had ever been taught said to call it in, stabilise, transport, document, but he grabbed my wrist with the last of his strength. "They will find me there." "Who?" "Please." That one word did what panic could not. It made him human. Rules are written for a world where the people with authority are not part of the danger. That night, something in his face told me the rules were too small. So I dragged him into the passenger seat, 1 inch at a time, while the storm tried to cover both of us. The road to my farmhouse was narrow and nearly invisible under fresh snow. The headlights caught bare trees, frozen ditches and empty fields. Every bump made Julian's jaw tighten. Once he made a sound low in his throat, and I thought he was losing consciousness, but he opened his eyes again and forced himself to breathe. I had been a paramedic for 11 years. I knew pain. I knew shock. I knew when a man was trying to look stronger than he was. "Gunshot?" I asked. He did not answer right away. "Yes." "Who shot you?" "People who do not want me talking." That is not an answer. It is the only one I can give until I know you are safe. I almost laughed. Safe. There was a bleeding stranger in my passenger seat, snow closing behind us like a curtain, and I was taking him to the house where I had been hiding from my own life. Safe had left me months ago. At the farmhouse, I parked behind the barn instead of in front. I did not want tyre tracks too visible from the road. The wind came hard across the fields when I opened the door. Julian tried to stand and nearly collapsed. "Lean on me." "I'm too heavy." "Then be heavy quickly." He gave a breath that might have been a laugh. Together we crossed the yard. The porch boards groaned under our weight. I unlocked the back door with shaking hands and got him inside. The house smelled of cold ashes, old wood, and lavender soap. It had belonged to my grandmother before it belonged to me. After Thomas died, I could not stay in the apartment we had shared in Burlington. His jacket on the hook, his mug by the sink, the dent in the couch where he used to sit, all of it kept calling his name. So I came here, to the edge of a town small enough that people still lowered their voices when they said widow. I helped Julian onto the couch and started a fire. Dry logs caught quickly. Orange light ran over the walls. "Where are we?" he asked. "Briar Glen, County Road outside town. Nearest neighbour is an old dairy farm half a mile away. Nobody comes here unless invited or lost. I am both." "You are bleeding on my grandmother's quilt. Try not to be poetic." This time his smile was real, though faint. I cut away his shirt and coat. The bullet had passed through the fleshy part of his side, ugly but not immediately fatal. He had lost blood. An infection was already a risk, but he was luckier than he looked. "You're a doctor?" he asked while I cleaned the wound. "Paramedic, trauma training." "Enough to know this needs a hospital, and enough to understand why you said no." He watched my hands. "You are good." I had practice. The words came out sharper than I meant. He noticed, but did not push. I flushed the wound, dressed it, checked his ribs, checked his pupils, checked the bruising on his face. His hands were long and careful, even in pain. Surgeon hands. That was my first thought. Not labourer, not drifter, not criminal, though criminals can have beautiful hands too. When I handed him tea with honey, he wrapped both hands around the mug as if warmth itself might hold them together. For several minutes we listened to the fire and the wind. Then I sat across from him, knees drawn up, arms around myself. "You promised to talk." He stared into the mug. "My full name is Julian Hart. I am a transplant surgeon. I worked at Northview Medical Centre in Montpelier." "Worked?" Past tense. His voice was low, controlled, but there was something torn under it. 3 weeks ago, I was called in late for what they said was an emergency procurement case, a donor transfer. The paperwork looked thin, but it was not the first time administration rushed things. I went downstairs to the surgical wing they rarely used at night. He stopped. The fire cracked loudly. On the table was a young man, Julian said. Early 20s, unconscious. No family present, no valid consent forms, no proper donor protocol. The chief of surgery, Dr. Victor Hale, was preparing instruments. I felt the air leave my lungs. "For what?" Julian looked at me. "To remove organs from a living, unwilling person." My stomach turned. I stood and walked to the window, pushing it open an inch. Cold air struck my face. "Are you sure?" He gave a bitter laugh. "I have been a doctor for 15 years. I know the difference between a legal transplant procedure and a crime." "What did you do?" His face twisted. "I left." The confession seemed to cost him more than the wound. I walked out. I told myself I had misunderstood. I told myself there had to be paperwork somewhere. I told myself men like Hale did not do things like that in real hospitals, in real cities, in real life. Then the next morning, the young man's body was in the morgue. Official cause of death, acute cardiac event during routine evaluation. God. His name was Owen Price. Julian closed his eyes. His brother found me 2 days later. Owen had disappeared after leaving work. He had never been sick a day in his life. He had no reason to be in Northview. His brother thought I could help because my name appeared on one internal schedule that had not yet been deleted. "So you started digging?" I started digging. He told me the rest in pieces. There had been missing people. Not many at first, enough to hide among accidents, overdoses, runaways, people without powerful families. There had been wealthy recipients who somehow received organs faster than any waiting list should allow. There had been shell charities, private transfers, falsified records, payments moving through clinics and foundations. Hale was at the centre of it, respected, polished, untouchable. Julian had found files, security footage, financial records, patient charts. He had help from a young hospital technician named Owen's brother, Mason, who had access to archived video. "Mason died yesterday," Julian said. I turned from the window. "What?" They said he drove off an icy road. He did not. He was careful. He was terrified. He called me before it happened and said he thought someone was following him. The room seemed to tilt. Julian reached into the inside pocket of his ruined coat and pulled out a small flash drive sealed inside a plastic medical bag. "Everything is here. Enough to put Hale and everyone connected to him away for the rest of their lives." "Then why not go to the police?" "I did." He looked at the fire. "I gave a copy to a county investigator 4 days ago. By the next evening, 3 men broke into my apartment. They knew exactly what I had given and exactly what I had kept. They beat me, demanded the original files, demanded the names of everyone who helped me. They told me if I did not disappear, I would end up like Owen and Mason." "How did you get out?" "Second floor window. I broke 2 ribs, but I ran." "And the gunshot?" "They caught up with me outside a closed gas station." I looked at him, at the fever bright in his eyes, the bloodless line of his mouth, the drive in his hand. "By bringing you here, I have become part of this." His head snapped up. "No, Mara, I will leave right now. I should never have let you bring me here." He tried to stand. I pushed him back down with one hand on his shoulder. "You will do no such thing. They will hurt you, maybe. Why are you not afraid?" "I am afraid." That was the truth. My hands were still trembling. "But fear is not always a reason to do nothing." He stared at me. For the first time in 8 months, a man's hand covered mine, and I did not pull away. That frightened me more than the storm. The next 2 days passed in a strange, fragile rhythm. Julian's fever rose, then broke. I cleaned the wound, changed the bandages, made soup, checked the road too often, and slept in a chair near the fire because I was afraid someone would come while I was upstairs. The first night was the worst. He drifted in and out of fever, murmuring names I did not know. Owen, Mason, Hale. Once he said, "Don't sign it," with such terror that I nearly woke him, but then his hand closed weakly around the edge of the blanket and he sank back into restless sleep. I sat in the armchair across from him with my emergency bag at my feet and Thomas's old wool sweater wrapped around my shoulders. That sweater still smelled faintly of cedar from the trunk where I kept his things. I had not worn it since the funeral. I had told myself it was because it was too warm, too scratchy, too large for me. The truth was simpler. It still felt like being held. Around 3 a.m, Julian woke and found me staring at the fire. "You should sleep," he whispered. "So should you. I keep seeing him." "Owen?" He nodded. He was 23. He had a tattoo of a compass on his wrist. I remember noticing it because his hand was falling off the side of the table. That is what haunts me, Not the blood, not Hale, that tattoo. Someone loved him enough to know what it meant. I did not know what to say. In emergency work, people think you become used to tragedy. You do not. You become used to functioning inside it. That is not the same thing. Thomas had a scar on his chin, I said after a while. Tiny one, from falling off a bike when he was 12. At the funeral, I kept staring at it because everything else looked wrong. Too still, too clean. But that scar was him. Julian turned his face toward me. I am sorry. I know. For once, those words did not anger me. Outside, the storm pressed against the house. Inside, two people who had no reason to trust each other kept watch over the same fire. He apologized for everything, for bleeding on the quilt, for making me miss work, for needing help, for breathing too loudly, for waking me when pain pulled him out of sleep. You apologize like a man who thinks existing is an inconvenience, I told him on the second morning. Occupational habit. Surgeons apologize? Only the ones who have failed. I set a mug of coffee on the table beside him. You did not fail. He looked at me. Owen died. Because Victor Hale killed him. Because I walked away first. I had no easy answer for that. I knew guilt. I knew how it made a person rewrite time until every road led back to the one moment they should have changed. Thomas died because he stopped to help someone, I said quietly. For months I told myself he died because I did not ask him to stay home. Grief loves false math. Julian watched me carefully. Thomas was your husband. Yes. How long? 4 years married, 6 together. I am sorry. Everyone says that. I mean it. I believed him. That evening we sat by the fire while snow moved past the windows like ash. I mended a tear in my medical bag. He read an old paperback from my grandmother's shelf, though he turned the same page 3 times. Did you ever think of leaving this place? He asked. Every day. Why don't you? Because leaving would be easy to confuse with healing. He closed the book. That is wiser than anything I have done lately. I doubt that. I thought I could run, cross into Canada, change my name, send the files to someone anonymous. Then every time I closed my eyes, I saw Owen on that table. So what now? We get the files to someone Hale cannot buy. Who? A journalist. That sounds dangerous. Everything sounds dangerous because everything is. We both smiled then, tired and afraid. By the 4th day, the outside world began pushing in. My supervisor called about an emergency shift. A man had been found injured on the old logging road near the highway. Could I cover? Julian heard enough from the couch to sit up too quickly. No. I have a job. Mara, think. Why that road? Why now? They may be checking everyone who worked in emergency services that night. You think they know I helped you? I do not know. But if I were Hale, I would look for the paramedic who drove that road and never reported a bleeding man. Cold spread through me. What do you want me to do? Go as if nothing is wrong. But I am coming with you. You can barely stand. Then I will barely stand nearby. We argued. Quietly first, then not quietly. I told him he would be recognised. He told me I would be used as bait. Finally, we compromised in a way that satisfied neither of us. He hid in the covered equipment space in the back of my vehicle while I responded to the call. The scene was empty when I arrived. No injured man, no tracks except tyre marks already filling with snow. The radio crackled with static. I stepped out slowly, the cold biting my face. Then headlights appeared at the far bend. Black SUV. No emergency lights. My pulse roared in my ears. Julian's voice came from behind me, barely audible. Drive. I did. The SUV followed. Snow flew behind us. Branches scraped the sides of the vehicle as I turned onto an old service road I had not used since Thomas was alive. Julian climbed into the passenger seat, pale and sweating, one hand pressed to his side. "There is a covered bridge ahead," he said. "How do you know?" "I studied maps while you slept." "Of course you did. It is too narrow for them if we angle through right." "If?" I was trying to sound confident. The bridge appeared out of the snow, dark and narrow. I held my breath and drove through with inches to spare. Behind us, brakes screamed. The SUV stopped before the bridge, too wide to follow without scraping itself open. I did not slow down until the lights vanished behind the trees. When we reached the farmhouse, Julian was shaking. "That was not an accident," I said. "No. They know. Maybe not who you are, but enough." That night, he called a journalist named Owen Reed. Not the dead young man, different Owen. A reporter Julian had known years earlier during a hospital negligence case. Independent, stubborn, not loved by powerful men. Julian put the phone on speaker. "Hart?" the reporter said after a long pause. "Half the state is looking for you. Northview says you stole controlled medication and attacked security." "They are lying." "I assumed as much. You were never interesting enough to become a drug thief." Despite everything, Julian laughed. "I need your help." "With what?" "Illegal organ trafficking." "Murder, medical records, financial transfers, video." The line went quiet. When Owen spoke again, his voice had changed. "Tell me where to meet you." The meeting was set for the next afternoon in a closed church basement in a town 2 counties over. I told Julian it was too risky. He told me doing nothing was worse. We were both right. I drove. He sat beside me, one hand inside his coat where the flash drive was hidden, the other resting near mine on the console. We did not speak much. Once, at a red light, his fingers brushed mine. Neither of us moved away. Owen was waiting near the church side door, a thin man in his 30s with glasses, a backpack, and the anxious look of someone who had decided curiosity was worth dying for. "You look terrible," he told Julian. "You look unemployed." "Freelance." "Same thing." They shook hands. Owen glanced at me. "And you are?" "Mara, the reason he is not dead in a ditch." "Then I like you already." Inside the basement, Julian gave him the drive. Owen opened the files on a laptop. With each document, his expression shifted from skepticism to horror to rage. 17 confirmed cases, he whispered. Maybe more. These payment records. Jesus. Hale has judges, donors, hospital board members, a state health official. Can you publish? Yes. But if I publish alone, they bury me before morning. I need to mirror it to national outlets, legal advocacy groups, federal contacts, everyone at once. How long? By dawn. Julian closed his eyes, relieved. Before we left for the meeting, Julian insisted on making backup copies. "You need rest," I said. "I need redundancy." That is the least romantic sentence anyone has ever spoken in this kitchen. He looked up from the old laptop I kept for paying bills. "You wanted romance from a man with broken ribs and a felony conspiracy in his pocket?" Fair point. For an hour, we worked like people preparing for a flood. He uploaded encrypted files to accounts under names I did not ask about. He wrote passwords on a piece of paper, then changed his mind and made me memorize one sentence instead. "If anything happens," he said, "you tell Owen the passphrase. Nothing is happening." "Mara, no." He leaned back, exhausted. "You cannot save me by refusing to discuss danger." The words hit too close. That was what I had done with Thomas. The night he died, snow was already falling. He had wanted to run to the store because Mrs. Bell from down the road called, saying her generator had failed and she was afraid her insulin would go bad. I told him the roads were bad. He kissed my forehead and said, "Then I will go slow." I could have asked him not to go. I did not. For months, I had turned that small silence into a weapon against myself. Now Julian sat across from me, waiting for me to be brave in a different way. "Fine," I said. "Give me the passphrase." He did. It was not dramatic. It was a line from a poem he said his mother used to recite when he was young. I repeated it until he nodded. Again. I repeated it again. Good. I hate this. I know. If you die, I will be furious. He looked at me then, and his expression softened into something that made me look down first. Then I will try very hard not to make you furious. That was when the side door opened. Dr. Victor Hale walked in as if he owned the church. He was older than I expected, silver-haired, elegant, wearing a dark overcoat dusted with snow. 2 men followed him. One had his hand inside his jacket. "Julian," Hale said sadly. "You always were too sentimental." Owen grabbed the laptop. "Run!" Julian shouted. Everything happened at once. Owen bolted toward the back stairs. One of Hale's men lunged after him. Julian pushed me behind him, though he could barely stand. I saw metal under a coat. "Gun!" I screamed. A hand clamped over my mouth. I kicked, twisted, bit hard enough to taste blood. Someone cursed. Julian shouted my name. I saw him dragged down by 2 men, saw his face contort with fear, not for himself, but for me. "Let her go," he yelled. "I will give you everything. Just let her go." Hale looked almost bored. "You will give me everything anyway." Something struck the back of my head. The world went black. I woke on concrete, cold pressed against my cheek. My wrists were tied behind my back. My mouth tasted metallic. For a moment, I did not know where I was. Then memory returned in a rush so sharp I nearly choked. Julian. I struggled to sit. The room was dim, windowless, smelling of bleach and old dust. Somewhere above me, machinery hummed. Footsteps came. The door opened. A man in a dark suit entered. "Where is Julian?" I demanded. "Alive," he said. "For now." He pulled me to my feet and marched me through a narrow corridor. We climbed stairs and entered a polished hallway that smelt of antiseptic. Northview Medical Centre. Of course, they had brought us to the place where it began. Hale's office was large, expensive and warm. Diplomas covered the walls. Photographs showed him shaking hands with senators, donors, smiling families who believed he had saved them. He sat behind his desk and gestured to a chair. "Ms. Collins." "Mara," I said. "If you are going to threaten me, at least use the name people who care about me use." His smile thinned. "Brave or exhausted. Sometimes they look similar." "Where is Julian?" Being stubborn in another room. "What do you want?" "From him, the remaining copies. From you, cooperation." "With what?" "A statement. You found Dr. Hart confused, injured, and in possession of stolen files. He spoke wildly about conspiracies. He threatened you when you attempted to contact authorities. You escaped. We rescued you." I laughed. I could not help it. "That is your plan?" "My dear, truth is rarely what happened. Truth is what can be documented by people with clean suits and institutional letterhead." He leaned forward. "If you help, you walk away. You return to your sad little farmhouse. You keep your job. You keep breathing." "And Julian?" Julian made his choices. I thought of Thomas on the road. Of all the nights I had asked why one good act had cost him everything. I thought of Julian bleeding in my passenger seat, still more worried about me than himself. I thought of Owen Price on a table with no one to speak for him. "No," I said. Hale's eyes went flat. "I was hoping you were sensible." "I have been sensible for 8 months. I hated it." His men dragged me downstairs. They took me to a storage room where Julian was chained to a pipe, bruised, one eye swollen, blood at his mouth. When he saw me, he pulled against the chains so hard the metal screamed. "Mara." I fell to my knees beside him. "I am here. Did they hurt you?" "Not enough." He gave a broken laugh, then winced. I pressed my forehead to his. "Owen got out," he whispered. "The reporter?" "I think so. He had the laptop." "Then we just have to stay alive." That was my plan too. Very original. For one impossible moment, in a basement under a corrupt hospital, tied and bruised and terrified, I felt more alive than I had in months. Because I was not alone in the dark. Hale came in 10 minutes later. "Last chance, Julian. Where are the backups? Everywhere, Julian said. Hale sighed. You always did overestimate yourself. He nodded to one of the men. The man pulled a syringe from his pocket. A tragic overdose, Hale said. A disgraced surgeon, a paramedic widow caught in his spiral. The public loves a sad ending when it is simple. Julian surged against the chain. Touch her and I will give you everything. Too late. The man stepped toward me. Then the building shook with the sound of doors breaking open upstairs, shouting, heavy boots, a voice over a loudspeaker. Federal agents, hands where we can see them. Hale froze. For the first time, fear crossed his face. The door burst open. Armed agents flooded the room. Someone shoved me down and shielded me. Someone else pinned Hale to the wall. The man with the syringe dropped it and raised his hands. I could not stop shaking. A woman in a navy jacket knelt beside me and cut the rope from my wrists.
Mara Collins? I nodded. You are safe. Owen Reed got the files out. He sent them to the FBI, 3 newspapers and every lawyer he knew.
Julian, I said. We are getting him loose. The chain came off. Julian collapsed forward and I caught as much of him as I could. He was too heavy, too hurt, too real. You are alive, he whispered into my hair. So are you, my brave, reckless Mara. You're bleeding impossible, Julian. He laughed, then groaned, then held me tighter. The first day after the raid passed in fragments. Hospital lights, different hospital, federal protection, nurses who did not work for Hale, doctors examining bruises, stitches, fractured ribs, infection. My wrists bandaged, Julian's fingers splintered where Hale's men had broken them during questioning. Victor Hale was arrested. So were 2 administrators, several security contractors, a county investigator, and 1 state health official. The story exploded by morning. Northview Medical Centre became a crime scene. Families who had been ignored for years started calling the tip line. Names of the dead began to surface. Owen Price, Mason Price, others, too many others. Julian and I were kept in separate rooms for medical reasons and security, but by the second night, I could not stand it anymore. I took my IV pole and walked down the hall in hospital socks. The guard outside Julian's room looked at me, then at my bandaged wrists. You are supposed to be resting. So is everyone. He opened the door. Julian was awake, staring at the ceiling. When he saw me, he tried to sit up. Don't, I said. Bossy. Alive. Also true. I sat on the edge of the bed and took his uninjured hand. For a while we only looked at each other. When danger holds 2 people close, there is always the question of what remains when the danger lets go. I asked it first. What happens now? He looked at our hands. I was afraid you would ask that. So was I. Mara, if you need to step back, I will understand. Everything happened too fast. Trauma can make people feel things that... Stop. He stopped. I am not afraid that I imagined this, I said. I am afraid you will heal, testify, go back to whatever life comes next, and I will be left with another story about a man I loved who disappeared after a snowy road. His face changed. Loved? I closed my eyes.
Too late to take it back. Yes. He lifted my hand to his mouth. I am not Thomas. I know. I cannot fill the place he left. I am not asking you to. Good. Because I do not want to be his replacement. I want to be the man who stays because you are still here. Tears blurred the room. Julian, I love you, he said. It is too soon. It is insane, I know, but I was dying in that snow before you stopped. Not only from the bullet, I had already given up on people. Then you pulled over. I bent over him and cried into the blanket while he stroked my hair with the hand that was not broken. Healing did not happen quickly. Julian had surgeries on his hand. He testified for hours, then days, then weeks. I gave statements too.
Owen Reed published a series that changed laws, ended careers, and made him famous enough to hate every minute of it. Families came forward. Some found answers. Some found only proof of what they had feared. The first hearing was held in a federal courthouse with marble floors that made every footstep sound too important. I sat in the hallway with a paper cup of coffee I could not drink.
Julian was beside me in a dark suit that did not hide the brace on his hand. Across the hall, a woman I had never seen before held a photograph against her chest. Owen Price's mother. I knew without being told. Grief recognizes itself in strangers. She approached Julian slowly. He stood, and for a moment he looked as if he might collapse under the weight of her eyes. "Dr. Hart?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." Her fingers tightened around the photo. "Were you the one who told them what happened to my son?" Julian swallowed. I should have done it sooner. I reached for his hand, but he did not look away from her. The woman studied him for a long time. Then she touched his injured hand with a gentleness that broke me more than anger would have. "You did it," she said. "That is what matters now." Julian closed his eyes. "I am sorry." "So am I." She walked away before either of them could say more. Afterward, in the car, Julian sat with both hands in his lap and stared through the windshield. "I thought it would feel like relief," he said. "Justice?" "Yes." "Does it?" "No." It feels like standing in a room where every light is on and still not being able to find what was lost. I put my hand over his. Maybe justice is not relief. Maybe it is only the first honest thing after too many lies. He turned his hand and held mine. "You sound like someone who has been thinking too much." Occupational habit. For the first time that day, he smiled. The trial dragged on. Hale's lawyers tried to paint Julian as unstable, bitter, ambitious. They tried to paint me as a grieving widow who had attached herself to a fugitive because trauma made me unreliable. For 2 days, I sat on the witness stand and answered questions designed to make compassion sound like stupidity. "You took an armed, unidentified man into your home?" one attorney asked. "I took an injured man into my home." "Against protocol?" "Yes." "Against common sense?" I looked at Victor Hale, sitting in his expensive suit, hands folded, face unreadable. "Common sense told a lot of people to look away," I said. "That is how he got away with it for so long." The courtroom went very still. The farmhouse changed slowly. At first, Julian came because it was safer than being alone. Then because his physical therapy was nearby. Then because his coat had somehow found a hook by the back door, and his books appeared beside mine. And one morning I realized he had fixed the porch step Thomas always meant to repair. That discovery made me cry so hard I had to sit down on the stairs. Julian found me there. I should have asked before fixing it. "No." "Then why are you crying?" "Because he meant to do it." Julian sat beside me, careful of his ribs. "I can undo it." I laughed through tears. That is the most ridiculous offer anyone has ever made. I specialize in ridiculous offers. I leaned my head against his shoulder. "I don't want you to undo it." "What do you want?" I looked at the repaired step, the snow melting along the edge of the porch, the fields beyond the yard. "I want to be able to love him and love you without feeling like one betrays the other." Julian was quiet for a long moment. "Then we will make room for both." He did. On the anniversary of Thomas's death, Julian drove me to the cemetery and waited by the gate until I asked him to come with me. I placed white roses at the stone. For the first time, I did not only apologize. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for the years. Thank you for teaching me that kindness matters even when it costs. Thank you for loving me well enough that I recognized goodness when it showed up bleeding in my car." I cried, but the tears felt different,
Less like drowning, more like rain. Julian stood beside me, silent, his hand warm around mine. We did not marry quickly. People assumed we would, because people love turning survival into a neat ending. They saw the headlines, the photographs outside the courthouse, the way Julian held my hand when cameras flashed, and they decided they understood the story. They did not know about the nights. They did not know that Julian sometimes woke gasping, convinced he was back in the basement under Northview. They did not know that I sometimes froze when headlights moved across the bedroom wall, certain a truck was coming through the snow again, and Thomas was somewhere I could not reach. They did not know that love, when it comes after loss, has to learn how to step around old wounds without pretending they are not there. One night in early autumn, Julian found me in the barn.
I was standing beside Thomas's old workbench, holding a box of rusted nails and crying with the kind of quiet embarrassment that comes when grief ambushes you over something ordinary. "Mara, I'm fine. You are holding nails like they insulted you." I laughed, then cried harder. He came closer but stopped a few feet away. That was one of the things I loved about him. He had learned not to rush every silence just because it scared him. "Thomas kept everything," I said. "Bent nails, broken hinges, screws from appliances we did not own anymore. I used to tease him about it. And now? Now I am afraid that if I throw any of it away, I am throwing him away." Julian looked around the barn, at the dusty shelves and the old tools, and the life that had existed before him. "Then we do not throw it away tonight. What do we do? We sort one box, keep what matters, let go of what hurts only because it has nowhere else to go." So we sat on the floor of the barn and sorted nails. It sounds foolish, maybe it was, but that night taught me more about love than any grand speech could have. Julian did not compete with a dead man. He did not hurry me past my grief so he could feel safer. He sat beside it, uncomfortable and patient, until I could breathe. A week later, he asked me to marry him. Not in a restaurant, not with music, not with a ring hidden in dessert. He asked on the back porch at sunrise, holding 2 mugs of coffee, wearing one of Thomas's old flannel shirts because it was the warmest thing near the door, and because by then, the house no longer treated memory like a locked room. "I love you," he said. "I love this house. I love the way you argue with the wood stove. I love that you still talk to Thomas when you think I am outside. I love the life we are building, even when it scares me. I do not want to be rescued by you forever. I want to stand beside you." I cried before he even took out the ring. "That was not a no, was it?" he asked. That was a very wet yes. We married at the courthouse with only a few people present. Owen Reed came, claiming he hated weddings, then cried into a napkin. My supervisor brought flowers. Mrs. Bell from down the road baked a cake that leaned slightly to the left. We laughed more than I expected. At the cemetery afterward, I placed my bouquet near Thomas's stone. "Thank you," I whispered again. This time, I did not feel like I was saying goodbye. I felt like I was bringing the whole truth with me. Months later, on a cold December morning, our daughter was born. We named her Hope. Not because life had become easy, it had not. There were trials ahead, testimonies, nightmares, scars, articles, whispers in town, days when grief still came without knocking. But Hope arrived with a furious cry and a fist no bigger than a walnut, and when Julian held her, his face broke open with awe. "Thank you for stopping," he whispered to me. "Thank you for staying alive on that road," I answered. I had motivation. "You were unconscious." "Spiritually motivated." I laughed, exhausted, and he kissed my forehead. Sometimes I think about that night. The road, the snow, the blood on his coat, my hands on the steering wheel. The moment I could have driven away and remained safe in the smallest possible meaning of the word. But safety is not always life. Sometimes life begins the moment you stop running from pain,
long enough to help someone else survive theirs. That night did not erase Thomas. It did not erase Owen or Mason or the people Victor Hale stole from the world. It did not make fear disappear. It did not turn me into someone brave every day. It did something stranger. It opened the door. Through that door came truth, danger, grief, justice, love, and a child named Hope. If there is one thing I know now, it is this: the darkest roads are not always the ones that lead us away from life. Sometimes they lead us back to it. You only have to find the courage to stop. If this story touched you, stay with us for more emotional life stories about love, courage, second chances, and the choices that change everything.